Hello, hello, good morning, everyone. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the ABCs of Packing Light. If you are here, say hello in the chat. Leave me a comment. If you're tuning in later, let me know. Leave me a comment on this video. I love to know who has stopped by. All right, so I am Brooke. I am the founder of Her Packing List, a site that helps women to pack light and travel confidently. And this is the ABCs of Packing Light. Each week, we will choose a different word from the next letter of the alphabet and talk about it in terms of packing light. And that brings up a ton of interesting conversation, a lot of mindset kind of topics as well. So it's been a lot of fun, and we are, again, chugging right along. Today, we are moving on to episode L. Episode L, everyone. Crazy. All right, so let me get my slide up. What is the word today? The word for today, episode L, is logic. The word for today is logic. All right. Good word. Let me get back to me. All right. So you've probably heard me say this numerous times by now. A helpful tool in reaching your packing light goals is to pack based on logic and reason, not worry, not emotion, not anxiety. Okay, so logic and reason. That is going to keep you focused. It's going to keep you on the path to reaching your packing light goals. All right, so there is so much emotion involved in packing, in choosing what to pack, how much to pack. There is so much emotion. If you were able to take the emotion out of the equation, you probably wouldn't have any issues with packing. Seriously. Right? But we're not robots. We're not androids. We have these emotions. And there is typically a big battle going on inside of us, all the time between our emotional heart and our logical mind, right? And depending on the type of person that you are, you probably have one of these things kind of like tipping the scale for you in some way, okay? There's the emotion and the logic, and it's probably like, as humans, we probably have a lot more emotion weighing on us, right? And if you are someone who leans more towards the emotional end of the scale, like myself, then when it comes to packing light, you will probably have more trouble with this process, okay? So if you're struggling, it's a lot of it has to do with emotion, all right? So it's that worry, it's the anxiety, it's this is my favorite thing, I have to pack it. That is the type of emotional involvement that makes our tiny and hopeful packing lists turn into massive and stressful to manage luggage, right? That's why tapping into the logic part of our brain more is a necessary part in the process of packing light or learning to pack light. Okay, once you go through the process and you practice this, it gets easier. It's much easier to make those decisions based on logic, okay? But at first, man, it is difficult to make the changes necessary to go from, a large bag to a tiny bag. Okay, so why is logic so important? Well, let's look at the emotional packing responses. The typical emotional responses that I see are the packing for the what ifs. And everyone here knows, everyone watching this knows what I'm talking about. We are always packing with that worry and anxiety, like what if? There's this thoughts in our mind that are going on. And that is a very typical emotional response. And you might also be packing certain items because of an internal issue, right? Such as the worry of being judged by others. Okay, so what you're wearing, If you make a mistake, what are people going to say? If you attempt this thing and you don't do it right, what are people going to say? Like that judgment, okay? So that is like the emotional aspect. And then on top of it, there is this big, big worry that if we don't have everything that we end up needing, like if we pack light and we leave something at home that we should have probably put in our bag, that we are actually failures, that we have failed. If we don't do it right, then we fail. If we don't have that one extra thing I didn't put in the bag, I've failed. And I know that sounds extreme, like saying it out loud, like it sounds a bit extreme, but it is a very real thing that is going on inside of a lot of people, even when just packing a bag. And if this resonates with you, let me know. That worry of not doing it right, not having everything, like it makes you, you're worried about it because you don't want to be a failure. You don't want to fail. Now, if we go back and we actually unpack all of these issues, the worry, the failure, the main underlying force that's at play is really a lack of confidence. Okay? It is a lack of confidence. That is the real issue. That is the drama that is probably holding you back. If you don't feel confident in your choices, if you don't feel confident in the way you look and feel, if you don't feel confident that people aren't going to judge you, you better believe that you are going to have a much heavier packed bag for your trip than someone who does have the confidence, right? And if you are able to get your bag down to a more manageable level, you've probably spent 10 times more effort and 10 times more stress in getting it to that level, right? So here is the beautiful part about logic. Here's the beautiful part about logic. Logic gives you the ability to be confident. Logic gives you the ability to be confident. Logic is great. I love logic, right? It gives you that ability to have confidence. When you pack for what is likely and reasonable, then no matter what happens out there on your trip, you know that you have done the best job that you can do. You packed for what is reasonable. You can be confident in that, in your choices of what to bring, how much to bring. You did that because it was reasonable and logical, and that is really the only thing that you can control is that part of, preparing for your trip. We don't know what's going to happen out there when we are on our trip. There's so many variables. We cannot control it, right? So if you pack for what is logical, what is reasonable, then you can be confident that you have done what you can do. And if for some reason the unlikely scenario actually happens when you're out there on your trip and you don't have that best thing, you don't have the perfect thing for that situation, or you have to go out and spend $20 to solve a problem, you don't have to feel like you failed because you didn't, right? You packed for what was likely to happen. And it's not your fault that things didn't work out, So it's kind of like it releases some of that pressure when it comes to packing. At least I think so. And I think that probably would feel nice to know, right? If you pack for what is logical, well, it's not a failure if some random event happens and you didn't have this extra thing packed, okay? So this right here is going to release a lot of that emotional baggage that is weighing you down physically and mentally. That's why I love logic. I love it. That's why I say it all the time. Pack with logic and reason in mind. Okay, on the other end of the spectrum, if you pack for all of the worries, it's like you never feel confident. No matter how much you add to your bag, to your packing list, it's probably not enough to stop the worries. Once the worries come in and take over, they will just keep coming. There is always something else, and there's always this sort of like unsettled discomfort, right? You're like, did I do enough? Is it good enough? Is this thing going to happen? What if, Now, the cool thing about logic is when your mind hits you with one of those thoughts, you can stop it in its tracks using logic. So should I bring this extra thing in case it rains? Well, the weather has not a single ounce of rain in the forecast for the next 2 weeks. Based on logic, maybe bringing that thing would be overkill, okay? You can leave it behind and you can make that choice with confidence, Now, it doesn't mean that you won't maybe choose certain items that give you more, versatility to cover more situations. It just means that, if you don't have something that is for rain, then it's, you didn't fail if it actually does, because the forecast man said there was no rain, not even a drop for the next 2 weeks. Okay. So confidence based on logic makes you unshakable. Okay. That's why I love it. Okay. So my question is, this is my question. How will you get your logical mind to overcome your emotional heart when packing light? Good question. So how can you do that? How can you pack more based on logic? How can you make that be the thing that is doing the packing, not your emotions? Can you let logic take over? How can you do that? Well, I say it probably every week. Data, research and data. Data is your friend. It's why I recommend to get out your notes app and write down how many times you're going to use that item on your trip. How it's the reason I want you to track the things that didn't get used when you come back home from trips. So you can see over time the patterns, the actual data. What's likely to happen? What are things that you consistently pack and don't use? What are you likely to participate in when you're on a trip? What do you like? What do you eat? What is available at your destination? The more data you have, the more logical you can be with your packing decisions. All right? So again, if you need to see it on paper, get out a spreadsheet, start that. Get a notebook out and start tracking the data, all right? The second thing you can do is you can talk about your worries, not just to yourself, but, maybe with a trusted friend, maybe with someone in your travel community, that when you say something out loud or when you voice this concern or your worry with someone else, that's often enough to get you to realize if what you are worried about is actually logical or if it's just a little bit of anxiety. Okay. The third thing you can do is practice packing, even just a little bit here and there, using more logic. If you can make small changes over time, that's great. And then when you go out with those small changes in action, you will start to get the confidence because you will see the success of that change, right? So practice. Little bits do add up. And finally, you can question things, okay? Question things that you maybe consider as a fact, or question things that, question your assumptions of your roles, for example, okay? So when you question things more regularly, it can help you to see things more clearly. You see, a lot of the time, our assumptions and what we consider to be fact, they have been rooted in emotion in some way over time, all right? So when you take the time to question everything, you might realize that things are actually very different, or things can be very different. It's not exactly how it is. Like, things change over time as well, So an example of this might be if you question your role. Like, I know a lot of women, even when they take handbag packing masterclass, they come in and it's not really their own packing that's the issue. It's the fact that they are trying to pack for everyone else as well. They are the caregiver. They are the person who is in charge of making sure that everyone is taken care of, that they have all the extra things. That is their role. And it might start off that This is the role when you have small children who literally cannot take care of themselves and, up until maybe their teenage years, you might have that as your role. But when they become teenagers, maybe that's not your role anymore. Maybe they are able to, take that on as their own role when traveling. Your husband, your partner, maybe they can, make sure that they have certain things packed as well. And it's not just all on you. So question whether or not that is still the case. That is the role that you need to play. Or will your family be okay if they are expected to pack things for themselves? Okay, so that's just one example. It's a very common one that I hear quite often. All right, so questioning things can help you pack more out of logic. All right? Okay. And I'm sure that probably resonates with a few people watching this. Yes, for sure. All right. So these are a few things that you can do so that you can ensure that your logic brain is packing more than your emotional heart. And if you do these things, it'll be a whole lot easier to tap into that logic part of your brain, right? And it won't be easy at first. But with practice, as with everything that I talk about here at Her Packing List, when you practice it, it will get easier over time. All right? Okay, so that is pretty much all I want to say about logic today. Remember, when you're packing, stop and ask yourself, am I packing with my logic brain or my emotional heart? Sometimes just stopping what we're doing and taking the time to question it. Question what you are doing. That is enough to change the trajectory of what's happening, So that does it for me for today for episode L of the ABCs of Packing Light. Our word today is logic. You pack out of logic and reason. Packing light is so much easier. So much easier, okay? If you liked what you heard, be sure to leave a comment on this video, like this video if it resonated with you at all. And again, I like to see who stopped by, so do leave me a comment if you have tuned in at any time. And of course, I will be here again, same time, same place next week for episode M of the ABCs of Packing Light. And I will actually be traveling while doing this episode, so that should be very interesting to see. All right. Okay, friends, I am Brooke from Her Packing List, and I want you to reach your packing light goals. Be sure to check out herpackinglist.com for more great packing tips and advice. Take care, friends. Have a lovely evening or a lovely day wherever you are in the world. Bye now. See ya.